Thanks everyone for joining today. This is the Cataloging Roundtable meeting for the first time of this year, 2025, which is great that you've joined us today. I'm Lauren Kelly. If we haven't met before, nice to meet you today. I'm always reachable at my email, lauren.kelly@vermont.gov, and it is at the top of the agenda that I always post in the event on LibCal. And the finalized version will get posted on the Vermont Department of Libraries website under the Cataloging and Technical Services page. And then on that page, learn about cataloging. That is where all of the past agendas live with the recording as a video. So typically we go around and introduce ourselves. Let me just share the agenda real quick. Nope, this is not. I do not want to share my full screen because you all will get so inundated with stuff. Okay, here we go. We are sharing just the agenda. Today's February 25th. It's 2025, not 2024, as I noted. We are meeting today at 1 to 2. Our next meeting, which will be in May, that will be meeting again at 10 a.m. And then our August meeting will be at 1. November will be at 10. So we are kind of going back and forth. Hopefully that gives the opportunity for people who may not be able to make the morning session being able to join us. So if this is your first roundtable, thanks for coming and welcome. I always try to make a note about upcoming continuing education classes that I'm teaching. There will be the spring and fall basic intro cataloging core course. People who are involved in the CPL program will be kind of prioritized, and within that, directors will be prioritized for placement. But if there's room, it's always good to check out that in our continuing education calendar link there. And as always, I'm looking for future topics to do a one-off webinar on or to bring up here at the roundtable. Really open to those things. So that's me. I typically have a note about, I find it really helpful if we go around and you can say your name. I'm going to stop sharing. You can say your name, what library you work at, and what ILS you use if you have a cataloging system. So I'm just going to read down the list. Feel free to come on camera for this or not, but it would be great to hear your name, what library you're at, and what ILS you use, if you have one. First on my list is Allison Banquet, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Allison Banquet. I work at Dorothy Alley Memorial Library in Williston, and we use Koha. We're part of Vocal,
Awesome.
with
Thanks,
also
Allison.
Aspen Public Overlay. Thanks.
Great. Yeah. Next on the list is Georgia Edwards.
Hi, I'm Georgia Edwards. I work at the Charlotte Public Library, and we also use Koha.
Awesome. And next we have Janet.
Hi, I'm Janet. I work at the Rutland Library. We use Koha as part of Catamount.
Awesome. And Jill.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jill, director at Fletcher Memorial Library, and I too we use Koha as part of Catamount Library Network.
Awesome. Next on the list is Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan. I'm Department of Libraries, Able Library. Use CLOS.
Awesome, thank you. Mary Ward. And if anyone doesn't have access to microphone, camera, whatever, feel free to put anything in the chat. I will read it aloud so that it does get captured in the recording. Just a note. Mary, we didn't hear from you, but up to you if you want to introduce yourself or not. Next, we have Michelle. No, Michelle, that's fine. Pat at Winhall, would you like to introduce yourself? Just let us know what ILS you're using.
I'm Pat at Winhall in Southern Vermont, and we use Koha.
Awesome, thank you. Next, we have Pawnee Derby. Pawnee, I can see you, but I can't hear you. Feel free, anyone, to put things in the chat also, like I said. Mary Ward, Middletown Springs and Wells Village School Libraries. Thank you. Oh, Michelle, sorry if we didn't catch you. Michelle at Fletcher Memorial using Koha, part of Catamount Library Network. Thank you. Did I lose my place where I'm at? Bruce?
Sorry, did you say
Yep.
Ruth?
Yep,
Oh,
and
hi.
you are unmuted. Hello.
Sorry. Ruth Hay, the Lanphier Memorial Library in Hyde Park, and we're part of Vocal using Koha.
Perfect, thank you. And Sarah Rogers is on the list. I think you are last.
I'm Sarah. I'm at Kellogg Covered Library, and we use Koha with Catamount Library Consortium as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Aurora. Aurora is from the Farnham Library in Jeffersonville and part of using Koha. Awesome. Thanks, guys. I always like to just get that little frame of reference in terms of what system we're used to. And it's always nice to hear when people are part of the various consortiums, just because it gives good context into best practices and resource sharing around the state. I think someone sneezed, so bless you. I'm going to pull up the agenda again. There we are. Okay, so some of these news bits are from the end of last year because our last cataloging roundtable did have some special guests and we had a nice discussion. If you missed that, there is the recording on the Technical Services website on the VTlib website. And that is always linked at the top of this document. So under the Learn About Cataloging section, you'll find all of the past agendas like this with a recording at the top. So some news and resources to share. A couple weeks ago, maybe last week, February has flown by. There was the OCLC cataloging community meeting, which is really an international meeting. And there is a recording of it. I will try and remember to put the link in here. But there was kind of these 4 large presentations from various people based in various locations around the world. But some really interesting topics were discussed. The first presentation of the day was about the Queer Metadata Collective's best practices for queer metadata document. It's a new document put together and published by this group. And their presentation was really great, very in-depth. The West Virginia University Library worked with OCLC on getting linked data. So for those of you that are interested in linked data, that was an interesting topic that they presented on, and it was very specific to West Virginia. They talked about Mothman and that local cryptid for them. There was an OCLC panel with the American University of Sharjah, and they spoke about deepening connections by turbocharging data with AI. Basically, they talked about building models to make better records, I believe, to like double check work. But of course, there's kind of, I'm not going to say controversy, but there's differing opinions on how AI can be best used with cataloging. There's a lot of people saying that this will help with processes. And of course, some people will say yes, but then a human needs to check that work. So maybe in the long run, we're not quite there yet, but it was an interesting presentation nonetheless. I will try not to let my biases show through. And then there was also a panel at the end of the day, the power of e-holding automations with OCLC and Sage Publishing. Very OCLC focused. So some of the presentations are maybe more interesting than others, but I will put the recording in there before I publish this agenda on the website. As always, let me know if you have questions. Either use the raise hand function at the top of Teams or the chat function. I'll try and read those out as they come in. As always, I try to link the most recent Library of Congress subject headings updates because, as we should always remember, that our cataloging frameworks are trying to keep up with our times, especially subject headings. And I don't know if people heard about there was a tentative list posted last week about changing the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America, as well as changing Mount Denali in Alaska to Mount McKinley. There was some discussion of those suggestions, and as a reminder, whenever Library of Congress posts tentative changes, they do allow for public feedback. They allowed 1 day for this particular list, which is a little bit out of the ordinary. But I believe the kind of underlying reason to do that was because I believe USGS has updated their naming schema to reflect the new mandate around that language. So it's an interesting topic. If people want to comment, feel free. As always, there is no mandate that you have to use Library of Congress subject headings at all. We wanted to make sure that that was noted. And if you ever have questions about subject headings, creating local subject headings, I'm just an email away and I'm always happy to help and talk about options and various alternatives if that's something that you are interested for your users. Yeah. So that's my comment on that. I did send in public comment if people are interested. I'm happy to let you know what I sent in. Otherwise, we can move on to the next kind of bullet point. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything in the chat. Nope, looks like we're good. Oh, wow. I think that maybe just made small. I see a hand. I can't see whose hand because there we go. Ruth.
It's Ruth. I would be interested to hear your comments because are on a personal basis, the idea of changing the Gulf of Mexico just rattles my brain.
Yeah.
And that's me on a personal basis. That's not me
Yep.
as a person working in the library.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. So I had the division that kind of controls and publishes these lists is the Policy Training and Cooperative Programs Division. I might share this window so that you all can see it as well. So I had sent in my comment that Dear Policy Training and Cooperatives Program Division, while I can understand being reactive to a mandate set down by the President of the United States, the decisions, oh, I see, Ruth, you still have your hand up, and I don't want to jump into this without hearing fully your comment. And also my windows have gotten shifted around.
Sorry, I'm not used to Microsoft Teams, so I've lowered my hand. Thank
You're
you.
good? Okay. Thank you. So I said I had sent in, while I can understand being reactive to a mandate sent down by the President of the United States, the decisions outlined in Library of Congress subject headings tentative monthly list number 12, Library of Congress subject headings 2, dated February 13th, but they did only post it on the 18th, which is a little bit against what they typically do in regards to deleting Mexico, Gulf of, and replacing the term with America, Gulf of, as well as changing the heading Denali, Mount Alaska to McKinley, Mount Alaska, and that's the subject term number is too preemptive. I've spoken to the team here at the Vermont Department of Libraries, and we believe patrons in Vermont will not use these new terms to access information on these specific geographic locations. From our standpoint, it is our belief that the material justification showing the popularity of usage of specific items used to justify a change in Library of Congress subject headings doesn't currently warrant a change in our libraries, most of which are users of the Library of Congress subject headings. According to the Library of Congress subject heading standards, when cataloging international place names, the preferred practice is to use the most widely recognized English form of the place name, usually with the country name following as a subdivision, ensuring consistency and clarity when searching for information across different regions. As it stands, while this Gulf is international waters, the International Hydrographic Organization, which the United States is a member of, retains the namesake the Gulf of Mexico. Changing this term will be in direct contradiction to this internationally recognized geographic location as it is currently referred to. Similarly, Mount Denali has been the place name since 2015 and is the preferred name which reflects the traditions of Alaska Natives and the preference of many Alaskans. There is a linked Associated Press article from this year talking about that, that quote is pulled from. People whose history and connection to the physical place amounts to subject authority on naming. Additionally, Denali is more than a mountain. Dibert of Fairbanks said in a news release, "It's a cornerstone of Alaska's history, a tribute to our diverse culture, and a testament to the people who have cherished this land for millennia." Also from that article. I share out the decisions made on Library of, I messed that acronym up. Anyway, Library of Congress subject heading updates at the Vermont State Quarterly Roundtable as a reminder to catalogers in the state of Vermont that our controlled vocabulary choices reflect our ability to serve our public directly, and these terms are very much alive, subject to change within good reason. It would be a shame to cut off access to material on these unique landmarks due to these tentative term changes. Please consider the reasons I have shared to not enact these changes to these terms. Respectfully, Lauren Kelly. So that is what I had sent in. I had looked at what some other catalogers in the country had shared as well for reasons, not to change these terms. And so this is a very kind of relevant conversation that is happening in our cataloging sphere nationally. So once again, moral of the story is that if you ever want help using different terms, if you're ever looking for alternative subject headings, or if you want help enacting changes, let me know. I'm really, at the end of the day, it is about access and common knowledge and trying to kind of keep controlled vocabulary controlled. Thank you guys for writing nice things in the chat. Any questions, comments, concerns? Otherwise, I will move on to the next item in the agenda. All right, let me pull the agenda back up. All right, as a reminder, there are plenty of various resources to get webinars on topics under the sun, but these core free webinars are a really good resource. These are just the recordings, but I'm blanking on what core is an acronym for, but it is specifically to do with cataloging and technical services. I want to say that it's related to the New England Library Association, but nope, it's from ALA. It's right there in the URL. This is why I write things down. So those are a great resource to check out, and we all like free. As always, I try to link to this wonderful, crowdsourced resource all about critical cataloging, and they post almost monthly. But something of note that I thought was interesting to share out, there is a link in that link to the Library Resources and Technical Services Journal, which is a free journal. You can get it delivered to your email whenever there's a new issue out, which is great. The issue, not this most previous one, but the one from before, had two articles that I found interesting. Keeping It Inclusive, Inclusive Cataloging Scholarship of the 1990s, just pointing to some history and kind of where we find ourselves today based on work that has been done in the past. Text mining, bibliographic metadata for inclusivity, analyzing most frequent words in titles, summaries, and subjects was also an interesting read. I do recognize that a lot of this is kind of supplementary to the day-to-day, but if you are looking for things to get you thinking, things that you could implement in your catalog, because who doesn't like making more work for themselves? I say that facetiously. But interesting things that are new and of note, in my opinion. Another thing, there was a toolkit published by the Metadata Networking Group of Illinois on diversity, equity, and inclusion in metadata. It's an interesting thing to think about, especially in our time. Any questions on those things or links? Check them out if you would like. Otherwise, free to disregard. Some things that have come up on the listserv that I've kind of transferred here under conundrums. A question has come up in the Catamount Library Consortium about cataloging graphic novels, whether the series title should be in the 245 statement, the title statement, or the 490 or 800. Those are for series. The book that prompted this is entitled Time to Party. It is volume 2 of the D&D Dungeon Club Some libraries have the 245 as Time to Party, and others have the 245 as D&D Dungeon Club with a subfield P, meaning part, for Time to Party. It's my understanding that both are correct. The bigger question is, what is best practice or factors to consider so we are consistent within our consortium about when to use the 245 for the series title or the volume title? I believe this was my response. Typically, I would say if there's consistency to how it's laid out on the title page on the physical item, that is how the 245 should be determined. But if it changes book by book, it's great to decide as a consortium what the uniform approach should be. Something I wonder about is how patrons typically request the book. I'm looking for the fourth Magic Treehouse series book, or I'm looking for Pirates Past Noon. The 490 and 800 will definitely always, really wanted to drive that point home. Definitely always want to get filled in uniformly. Using the Next in a Series website or even Goodreads can be a good resource for that. I see what you mean just from searching for that D&D title in the Z3950 search. Library across the nations seem to have this issue too. I said seems twice. Anyway, another thought I have is how often are the 246 fields for alternate title helping with this problem? I would default the 245 to how it appears on the title page and then use the 246 field to supplement it. Library of Congress's scope note for the 245 field does not mention anything that points directly to a series name in my reading of it. And then I have quoted it here. Title statement fields consist of the title proper, which comes from that title page on the physical book, and may also contain the general material designation like the medium, the remainder of title, other title information, the remainder of the title page transcription, and statements of responsibility. The title proper includes the short title and alternative title, the numerical designation of a part or section, and the name of a part or section. So whenever a question gets sent to me, one thing I will note is that I try not to act like I know your library better than you do. And I always want to hear what you come up with as a solution or what you are going to try out. And if we need to revisit a different approach, I'm always happy to follow up in that way. So I thought I would share that there. If anyone has any questions or comments about this specific concern or a similar concern that this has you thinking about, feel free to chime in or put it in the chat. I know that series often pose troubles, whether it is how are we laying out the 245 or even how are we best using the 490 and the 800 or the 830. So I know that series perennially cause issues when it comes to cataloging of them. And then I want to say that the Magic Treehouse started renumbering their books, which just adds even more chaos and confusion. Or perhaps there was another series. In any case, it's a difficult one. I did get a question about helpful guides for cataloging playaways. The prominence of playaways in our catalogs has been going up, which is great for accessibility. And so I did gather up some guides that were published on the internet. I should have listed what libraries they come from, but you can click in the links and find out. A note from one of those guides was that the content on the playaway is cataloged rather than the device itself. It makes sense and is a basic thing, but it bears repeating when thinking about what needs to be represented in the MARC record for the item. A blog post noted that the item is described in the 300 field as a sound media player. Some libraries circulate playaways with the batteries, etc., and some do not, like headphones and stuff like that. This is a local decision, so these items should not appear in the bib record, but the bibliographic record must contain a Mark 538 field noting that this requires earphone and AAA battery, since this equipment is required for the operation of the item. And then I've listed out the 330, those RDA fields, 336, 337, and 338, just as a quick, easy thing to see. Any questions about playaways? And always, I encourage you to interrupt me if that is easier. Some more listserv questions that I've kind of gathered just to think about and see what conversation is happening on the listserv. Differentiating books in Spanish. Some ideas that were shared about using different spine label tape in different colors to indicate different language, an SP on the spine label, making sure you have a specific shelf or section for them. And then there's also the kind of sub-question in that with, are these bilingual books? If they are, it makes sense to integrate them with the rest of your materials. This librarian would add a sticker on it noting, but if they are Spanish language books only, I would keep them together. In my previous library, we kept them all together in 460. I believe that's as the Dewey number. That created a space for all of the Spanish language materials from board books to chapter books. Putting them in nonfiction was easiest for everyone. Another response, we have children's books in different languages here, and we do distinguish them in two ways. One is that we have a language shelf, so they're all grouped together, and then we also use specific call numbers. For example, we have J. Lang, Spanish, and then the author's last name. J. Lang, French, author's last name, and so on. It helps them grouped by language, and so far has worked well for us. Another person wrote that they have SP for Spanish, followed by the call number, and then we put an orange label protector on it. We shelve them right next to their English language counterpart. So they're kind of interspersed, but distinct with that orange label protector. Any questions about other language books? I was just cataloging some Russian books that we got here at the department. And it's always an interesting process. Some ILSs play better with non-English characters, and some do not. Another question that I feel like comes up a lot is about the organization of graphic novels. Someone wrote years ago, we stopped organizing them by the author's last name because it is the most popular section and students were not putting things back where they went. We currently have a system where we loosely organize them by subject. However, because the graphic novel collection is growing so quickly, we are thinking about moving them to a whole new area of the library and are considering the most effective way to shelve them so that kids find what they want and we can put them back in orderly fashion. Whenever there are questions about classification that come to me, I always try and hypothesize about where is the item going to get checked out the most? Where is it going to be most intuitive and kind of visible to patrons? And that can depend on the library. Someone had responded, we currently have manga and graphic novels near one another, but separate. Everything is ordered by the author's last name. DC and Marvel are also separate. Sections for graphic novels, graphic memoirs, graphic nonfiction, and manga are separated out, but they are all neighboring each other. For 7th to 12th grade, the graphic novels are separated. The middle grade by middle grade and YA. They are near each other, but in clearly marked sections. I also separate out graphic nonfiction from fiction. in K through 4, mostly by author under the 741.5 in their own bookcase. I've redone some of the call numbers to help group and identify. I made a new 741.5 HIST for historical fiction, BAB for Babysitter's Club, RIO for Percy Jackson, and SUP for superheroes, etc. Once again, I feel like this is just such a great point about classification, that classification cares about what, or rather how your library is set up, not necessarily solely on what the item is. Much like subject headings are about what the item is and represents, your call number can be what makes sense for layout in your library. For pre-K to 6th grade graphic novels in their own section up front in the library, as they are extremely popular. Call numbers are 3 lines long, GN first, then 741.5 if fiction, or a more accurate Dewey number if nonfiction, then the author. Series are shelved together, even if they have different graphic novel authors, by the original author's name. This happens most for graphic novel adaptations, i.e. MAR for Babysitter's Club or TAR for the I Survived series. Call number prefix GN, then author's last name. Series stick together, series together with one last name. Additionally, all graphic novel books have a spine level sticker. Nonfiction books are still in nonfiction with their subject, but recognizable with a graphic novel spine label sticker. So it sounds like they're interspersed at that library with the nonfiction section in their subject. YA graphic novels are in a YA section with a graphic novel spine label sticker. I've worked in different libraries that have approached the graphic novel section differently. In one of the libraries, they were all under the 741.5, whether they were nonfiction or not. So they were just in the larger juvenile nonfiction section. And then one of the libraries I worked with, they had their own section, and I think everything started with GN, and then if it was fiction, it was just the author's last name or Dewey. So there's multiple ways to do it, whatever works for your library and where it's going to kind of get the most visibility and traction. Yeah. Any questions about graphic novels? I'm not hearing anything. Jill was telling me before we started recording today that their library and I believe the whole of Catamount Library Network, Jill, correct me if I'm wrong, has started putting together a really good process, very clear about what to do when adding a new or finding a better record and communicating that out. Jill, do you want to kind of recap that for everyone more clearly?
Sure, and I invite Janet and Michelle to jump in if I misspeak
Yeah.
or forget something. So in Catamount, we already have a cataloging procedure that we all follow for specific fields for all of our records to contain and to hopefully, so they'll show up in Aspen more easily in a better version for our patrons. So we use, Catamount uses Basecamp as our means of most communication. Within Basecamp, we have what's called projects. So there's one for cataloging where I would post an agenda for a meeting. Somebody will post a question, screenshots, whatever. We discuss it, fix it, interact. We just had a catalog meeting last week and decided to come up with this additional practice. And we have another project called Catalog Changes because they were just getting lost within the cataloging project. So my example is what I just did. We just purchased Braiding Sweetwater, and it's a paperback copy. It's all that was available. And so I go through the procedure, check the ISBN, look for a record. So there is a record, and on that record was two or 3 sets of ISBNs. Our rule is each bib record moving forward, putting in as a new book, contains the ISBNs 10 and 13 when 10 is available for only the item you have in your hand. So knowing that, this is what the procedure would be. I would take my new book, the paperback, and I would find the best record, and I would make a new record for my paperback copy. Then I take a screenshot of all the libraries that are on the old record, and then I go to Basecamp. I also make note of the MARC record number in Koha. So then I post the title of the book, the MARC record number, and say that I have a paperback copy and I have made a new record for it. Please check your book and see if you would like to move it or stay where you are. And then I put the screenshot up. So then, you get notifications all the time of this and that. So somebody would see the note that I had just made a new record. They would go in and check their copy, decide whether to leave it on that record or to move it to the new one. Now that was only a paperback. So now say Library B comes in and they look at the old record and they have a hardcover, but there's too many ISBNs on that original record. So they make a new hardcover bib record and post the same thing that I did. So the ultimate result is, in most cases, everybody moves off the old non-RDA record and moves to their respective correct new record, ditch the old one, and on we go. Now, we don't, our rules are we don't go back and fix every book record that we touch and blah, blah, blah. If you have time and you want to fix one, that's fine. But when you get a new copy like we did, and that's the only record and it's really bad, then this is what we're doing. So I hope that made sense.
Yeah, that's great. I just thought that it was such a good example of having really clear communication about, okay, everyone, go to this place to see these specific updates and see if it applies to your library. I just think that's fantastic.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Jill. Let me check the chat. Which listservs are the questions coming from? Allison, the questions that I have put into the agenda there, I think potentially a couple of them were from the Vermont School Library Association listserv, and then some of the other ones are from either the staff.lib, I want to say it is, or the one that UVM is in control of. Basically, I see all of them. So compiling them, they're coming from kind of all over the place. Yeah. Going forward, if I compile kind of things that I see as cataloging relevant, interesting, good conversations, maybe useful. I'm happy to say which listserv they are on, because I think I compiled most of these closer to November. I won't be able to do that now, but good thing for moving forward. So thanks, Allison. Okay, so that is all I had prepared for today. The floor is open completely for the next 15 minutes. If there are cataloging conundrums that you are running up against, if there are successes that you would like to share out, I'm always happy to hear those. If you have any resources or news or anything that you would like to put me on the spot about, I welcome that now. I may regret welcoming that, but I'm going to anyway. Or we can be done for this cataloging roundtable. Hopefully we'll see you again at next ones. Allison, you have your hand up.
Hi, yes, thanks. I am looking at the biography section in our library. We're in a public library. And my former director wanted me to figure out a different way to deal with the 920s, which are the group biographies. And I was just wondering, what do other libraries do? Because it's not as simple as putting them under a last name. Like if it was like all about the Roosevelt family, they could all be under B. Roosevelt. But if it's about like women journalists or something, like they don't all have the same
Yeah,
last name. So our individual biographies are under B, the subject last name. But I was just wondering, what do other people do about collective biographies?
that's a really good question. If anyone on the call would either like to put any response in the chat, or if there's anyone who is like, this is what we do, um, feel free to jump in. I just wrote this kind of question down about biographies 920 for group biographies. The question is really, how do we work this into the overall biographies section? Yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, the only thing that I've seen in libraries is that 920 does just stay in the nonfiction, um, and the biographies on individuals are separate. That is what I've seen the most. Um, yeah. I almost wonder if, but once again, it's a little, it might be confusing for patrons if you kept all of the 920s under 920 and just put them next to uh, biographies on individuals. I don't know if that, uh, that kind of depends on what your space looks like, your shelf space. I also wonder if would it make sense? Perhaps it wouldn't. This is me spitballing. If you put them under B and then the author's last name. Once again, it's not, that's not very clear to the random patron who comes in and stands in front of that section and is looking for a specific person. It's not quite going to get you there. Um, yeah. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look up uh, if there are any guides around this specific question. Sarah Rogers writes, when possible, I put group biographies under the subject Dewey number. So Hidden Figures is in the 520s. Oh, that kind of works around the conundrum entirely. I mean, obviously, case by case basis, but thanks, Sarah. I'm going to write that down as a potential thing to consider. Once again, it's I wonder, of course, always about shelf space, but I think that's a great way to kind of make it so that a book is in the place with the overall subject. So, thank you, Sarah.
Oh, this is Allison again. Yeah, thanks. And it's like we have like only one shelf of 920, so it's not like a huge deal. It's just,
Right.
yeah, I think it's more like trying to either get them with the other biographies or put them somewhere else so they're not just kind of hanging out on their own and people don't really know what they are. So, yeah.
Yeah, it definitely seems like books in the 920s would maybe circulate better in a in a section where it's either based on their larger subject, or if they are with their biographies. I remember there was a really good kind of dual biography about Carrie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds, written by Carrie Fisher's brother. And I remember it having to go in the 920s, and I was like, that's kind of the best we could do in that case. But it seemed like, okay, this book may not circulate again unless someone, is searching the catalog, and not just browsing the shelves. But, it all depends on what kind of process the patron likes to go through. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions, concerns, conundrums, successes? Anything that you would like to see cataloging wise in the future? Let me know. Otherwise, I will stop the recording, and should be processed in maybe a day or so. Hopefully, some of you will reach out to me if things come up, or if there are things that come to you in response to anything today, or if for a future topic, please let me know. Otherwise, we can wrap it up. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.